当動画ではスカルマーチャントの映像が流れます。心臓が弱い方、ストレスを感じる方、チェス恐怖症の方、生理的嫌悪を感じる方、憎しみをお持ちの方、トラウマをお持ちの方はご視聴をお控えください。2023年7月、スカルマーチャントをマスターしたと自称する配信者 CM9i が SNS に一つの投稿を行った。彼はその投稿で意図的に3つの発電機を固めて永遠に守り抜く戦術こそがスカルマーチャントの遊び方であり、例えるならばそれはチェスのようなものだと誇らしげに宣言した。この投稿は瞬く間に注目を浴び、世界中に拡散していった。そして海外の DBD コミュニティの間でチェスマーチャントという言葉が流行するようになると CM9 は再び SNS に自身の考えを投稿した。しかし今回の投稿内容はあろうことかヨーロッパ出身の有名配信者ナイトライトの腕前を公然と批判するものだった。ナイトライトはベテランの DBD 配信者であると同時に世界でも指折りの実力を誇る大会勢チームイターナルのメンバーでもあり、自身の名誉を傷つけられたと感じた彼は怒りを込めた返信を即座に送った。すると CM9 は俺ならお前たちにも勝てるという内容をほのめかした言葉を返した。この挑発的な返信は実質的にチームイターナルへの挑戦状となった。そして数日後、彼らはプライベートマッチの場でついに対峙し、彼らの戦いは2人の有名配信者によって観戦された。このマッチでは特別なルールやパークの縛りなどが一切存在せず、両者とも自由な構成でプレイすることが可能であった。そのため CM9 は彼が普段パブリックマッチで使用しているパーク構成とアドオン、つまり彼にとってのベストな構成を選んだ。一方、チームイターナルは DBD のメジャーな大会に出場した時と同様にパークやアイテムの重複を避けるという厳しい縛りを自ら課した。その上、アイテムとアドオンのレア度も黄色のものだけを選び、さらにマップの選択権もあえてキラー側の CM9 に譲った。マッチが始まってから最初にキラーが行ったのは地下室がある建物の周辺にいくつものドローンを設置することだった。当時のスカルマーチャントのドローンは障害物を貫通してスキャンすることが可能であり、設置された場所によってはドローンの解除が非常に困難だった。特に地下室の最深部に設置されたドローンの脅威はとてつもなく大きかった。
He's putting the drone into the basement. Okay, that changes quite a bit. This drone is super hard to disarm now.
そしてマッチ開始から4分43秒後、彼らは4台の発電機を修理し終えた。この時、キラー側の CM9 のフック数は未だゼロであり、一見するとほぼゲームオーバーのような状況だった。しかし、マッチ開始当初から地下室周辺に近接する3つの発電機だけを巡回し、ずっと守り続けていた CM9 にとって、これは計画通りであった。そもそも彼の目的は、サバイバーを自らの手で捕まえて処刑することではなかった。彼の真の目的は、マッチを引き伸ばしてゲームそのものを人質に取り、最終的にサーバーの時間切れによって自動的に勝利を得ることであった。
I mean, if the match timer runs out, all 4 survivors get insta-killed. I don't know if you knew that. After an hour, all 4 survivors just die.
サバイバーを発電機から追い払うだけでチェイスはせず、3つの発電機の間をひたすら歩き回る。彼はこの単調で退屈な巡回行動だけを永遠と繰り返した。そこには高度な思考やスキルは一切見られず、彼が SNS で言ったチェスのような洗練されたプレイスタイルとは程遠いものであった。むしろチェスのような高度な思考やスキルを発揮したのはチームイターナルの方であった。彼らは長引くマッチによる肉体的疲労や集中力の低下とも格闘しながら必死に試行錯誤を繰り返し、ゆっくりとだが確実に発電を進めていった。そしてマッチが開始してから約52分後、ついに彼らは通電に成功した。
Wait, Dan is here and he doesn't have help. They finished the last gen! They finished the last gen! It is done! It is done!
この時、サーバーの時間切れによって自動的にキラーが勝利するまで残り8分を切っていた。だが、発電機という呪縛から解き放たれたチームイターナルは、ここぞとばかりに本領を発揮し、得意のチェイスを披露しながら、ゲート開放までの時間を稼いだ。しかし、片方のゲートが開いた直後、問題が起きた。探知不可状態のスカルマーチャントの接近に気づかなかった仲間の一人が、不意を突かれてダウンしてしまったのだ。さらに彼が倒れた場所は、不運にも地下室の近くだった。キラーにとってこの状況下での一番の最善策はサバイバーを地下に釣ることであり、そうなれば少なくとも全員生還が不可能になる。それは誰の目にも明らかだった。ところが不思議なことにキラーは地下室を選ばなかった。代わりにゲートからやや遠い場所のフックにサバイバーを釣ってしまった。完璧だと思っていた当初の計画が破壊され、パニックになっていたキラーは この時点ですでに賢明な選択ができない心理状態に陥っていた。だが彼のこの致命的な判断ミスはチームイターナルにとって千載一遇のチャンスだった。彼らは急いで回復し合うとお手本のようなチームワークで仲間を救助し、最終的に全員生還を成し遂げた。チームイターナルのメンバー全員が脱出ゲートをくぐった時、サーバーの時間切れまで残りわずか数分であった。こうして DBD 史上最も長い儀式が終わった。
Yeah, they've definitely earned those T-Bucks. Checkmate!
これまで様々な困難なマッチを経験してきたチームイターナルにとって、この儀式は一生涯忘れられないものとなった。その後のインタビューで彼らの口々から最初に漏れてきた言葉は、疲れたの一言だった。
How are you guys feeling?
Exhausted.
Very exhausted.
チームイターナルの勝因は試行錯誤を繰り返し、最後まで諦めないことだった。一方 CM9 の敗因は発電機を固める戦術に慣れすぎてしまい、キラーをプレイする際に必要不可欠となる基本的なチェイスの腕前が乏しかったこと、臨機応変な判断や賢明な選択ができなかったこと、そして何よりもチェスのように一手先を読むスキルが欠けていたことだった。
How you guys doing, by the way? How you guys doing? How was your day? How was your Sunday? Thank you so much for the visit, by the way, Kurono. I would say pre-running a lot, like pre-running a lot for sure when it's going to your gen. And probably pick up a lot of pallets, you know? Pick up a pallet, if she plays a drone, try to switch to another tile or filler, you know? But yeah, pre-run, remember always to crush the drones. And I think that's all you need, like, I think hit tank against Skull Merchant can be very annoying for her.
Kurono, thanks for the 100 bits. He said, hello, I'm currently conducting a survey regarding the Skull Merchant. Why do you think a lot of people hate her so much? Why do people hate the Skull Merchant? Why do people hate the Skull Merchant? Like, if we're trying to brainstorm this, I can think of some things that are hateable about Skull Merchant. I've always said this like a million times, but I think one of my biggest issues with Skull Merchant has always just been the fact that there's like no punishment for using her power badly. Like, if you just randomly throw a drone down in a spot that doesn't really make sense, you don't really get punished for it, right? Because you don't slow down at all. Like, there's no slowdown for using your power. And on top of that, not only is there no slowdown, you quite literally get undetectable. Like, they quite literally give you a random buff for just using your power. Like, why? Like, why do you randomly just get undetectable for no reason? Like, that's so weird. I think really the main problem with Skull Merchant is just that she doesn't really take any, like, skill to play. Like, there's no punishment for playing in, like, an unskillful way. But also playing against her is, like, very complicated, you know? Skull Merchant is a trap killer, and I just don't see her that way at all. And I also don't think it's a healthy idea to, like, push her into that either, you know? I feel like Skull Merchant is a terrible design from almost every angle. Yeah. I kind of agree, you know? I kind of agree. Feels like they didn't really hit the nail on that one, you know? Which also makes me wonder, everyone always has this, like, theory that, like, maybe she was supposed to be Predator all along or something. And you know, like, maybe, man. Maybe. Maybe you guys were onto something after all, you know? It is kind of weird. Her design is just, like odd, I guess.
You're conducting a survey for the Skull Merchant. Okay. Why do I think people hate the Skull Merchant so much? I think why people initially hated the Skull Merchant, it had such a lasting effect that people still hate her up until now. I think there was a multitude of reasons. From the beginning, I think it really started with when there was the original teasers, everyone kind of had this idea in their head that it was going to be like a futuristic type of killer, and then we got Skull Merchant. Like, when we seen her, we were like, it has nothing to do with that, so people are like, it kind of put them off. Then when you got to the gameplay, everything just kind of felt a little bit rushed. Like, her Mori animation was lacking, they eventually changed that. Her power was kind of boring, it was just 3-gen the whole time. And it just overall was such a bad chapter. And that last thing, and not to mention it did get leaked as well, and all that the whole fiasco. The lore itself too wasn't too in-depth. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, she just became a CEO, ta-da. And I think because it had such a bad first impression with the community, to this day, that effect still lasts. And even though they've made changes to Skull Merchants and tried to improve upon her, and even now, which is kind of weird what kind of changes they've made, I think people still have that same idea in their head, including myself. Like, I'm guilty of that as well. Like, I barely even know how Skull Merchant works, and frankly, I don't really care too much to know about it because you rarely see players play Skull Merchant. So I think that's why people dislike Skull Merchant so much. Just a bad first impression, and because of that, it had a long-lasting effect, and I don't think that'll ever change unless they fully rework her.
Currently conducting a survey regarding the Skull Merchant. Why do you think a lot of people dislike her so much? It's probably because people don't really do anything. They just set drones, and then if you run too far, they don't chase you that far. It's like the average Skull Merchant. I do recognize that almost everyone plays her the same way. I don't think the average person that plays that killer is great at chasing survivors, and I've shown that many times. For those of you that have watched me enough, you'll see like a Skull Merchant whiff an attack or something, and then they just don't chase me anymore. I rarely see that from any other killer in this game.
For me, it's kind of, it feels like a bit mindless gameplay. Like I don't feel like there's a skill ceiling with it. Like Huntress, you have to, practice your aim. Same with Deathslinger and all the other killers. Whereas a Skull Merchant gets so much reward for not a lot of effort. It's like place drone, repeat. You get the hindered, you get mended. Like it costs you so many health options. And really, there's no skill behind it. It's not, you don't get rewarded for skill, you just get rewarded for pressing M2 and putting a drone down. I think a lot of people in the community feel the same, and I think it's just the way they play as well. They all play the same pretty much. Not when you're just placing a drone, you gotta work for it. Like Deathslinger gets mended, but you have to get a good shot first, After getting a good shot. Good drone placement, it's not hard. You literally walk up to a loop, place a drone. Walk up to a gen, place a drone. It's really not difficult.
Why do people hate the Skull Merchant? It's pretty easy killer. Easy killer and very effective.
You're currently conducting a survey regarding the Skull Merchant. Why do you think a lot of people hate her so much? It's a combination of the original stigma of her being Chess Merchant and being able to hold 3 gens, and a combination of her new gameplay, which is something that invalidates basically all survivor skill. It is pretty much entirely up to her to just drop a pallet or drop a drone and force someone to leave a chase. It's a bit different now. Now it's more playable in the loop. It's mostly that her counterplay is insanely boring. It's just leave the loop, pretty much.
Why do you think people dislike her so much? Because she's boring.
Because she's still very boring. Like, she gets haste, she gets undetectable. You as survivor get hindered without doing fucking anything, and that's just not fun. You just press one button, and you have pressure.
I'm currently conducting a survey regarding the Skull Merchant. Why do you think a lot of people dislike her so much?
I think a lot of people dislike her a lot because her initial release was really bad. The way that she was designed and the way that she looked, it was very obvious to try to appeal to the community, but a lot of the community saw it more so as like a cash grab. She was released with a 3-gen meta. The Sadako 3-gen called Eruption meta. The tournament, she holds games for an hour, right? And the reason why she dislikes people that dislike Skull Merchant is just because he got off on the wrong foot. That is a reputation that seems like it's impossible to remove. It would probably be very impossible to convince people otherwise. The Chess Merchant was the final nail. Yeah, it was a cascade snowball. So initial wrong foot, and then bad thing 1 happened, bad thing 2 happened, bad thing 3, and then Chess Merchant. I think it's impossible to make people like her.
Currently conducting a survey regarding the Skull Merchant. Why do you think a lot of people dislike her so much?
People dislike Skull Merchant so much because of the release and how broken she was on release. You know how first introductions are very important in terms of the way that you view people, when you're at an interview, you want to have a smile, shake their hands, you want to be confident and courteous and stuff like that, right? So everyone's first introduction to Skull Merchant was being held hostage, and that will never go away. People will always have that natural disdain for her because of that. In my opinion, it's going to take years. It's going to take literal years for people to warm up to her. Yeah, and it was so easy too, right? You could play Skull Merchant and you could do it so easily. It was not hard. Once you saw how Skull Merchants were doing it, you could do it. We tried it. I tried it. First game, I held them hostage for 45 minutes. people DC from Skull Merchant because they just don't want to play because of this residual hatred. And the fact that people do that, like my biggest gripe in playing against Skull Merchant is that my teammates will give up, my teammates will DC. That's no fault of the Skull Merchant though. Like that is zero fault of the Skull Merchant. That is just, that's never going to help. And that's why I think it's going to take literal years, even after like a whole another couple reworks or nerfs, it's going to take literal years before people on average start to warm up to Skull Merchant even remotely. They could literally give her like Wesker bounds. You know, Wesker also a pretty liked character by survivors, and she would still be hated. When I did my Skull Merchant streak, right, I played Skull Merchant in more of a chase style. The amount of salt that we received from that win streak was astra-fucking-nomical. More DCs than you would ever see in any win streak, and like the amount of salt, the things that survivors were saying, like it was insane. And I wasn't 3-genning at all. I was just like chasing and just trying to get value from my perks, and you know.
I'm currently conducting a survey regarding the Skull Merchant. Why do you think a lot of people dislike her so much?
I have a plethora of reasons. One, I think she's tainted by her original concept. A lot of people already have a bad taste in their mouth from her 3-gen era. And that never really went. Because whilst the gameplay changed, the technicality of playing against her is the same, right? Get rid of the drones, whatever. 2, she has a slightly overcomplicated kit, right? The drones, they scan 3 times. You get scanned, you get a claw trap. The claw trap means that she can scan you. While she's doing that on her phone, drones are still going around. They can injure you. She gets haste, you get slowed down, but she also gets undetectable. While you're in the zone, she can track you. New players don't care to learn that because they have to learn 37 killers. To do that all on one character is too much. She's unfriendly towards the vast majority of players of DBD, which are a new player has to learn 36 other characters. That's why Skull Merchant's kill rate is so high at such lower levels, is because she just has a confusing kit. It really is. It's like, me personally, I like interaction, and the interaction of playing against Skull Merchant is try to dodge a drone, but she's gonna hit you anyway because she's faster, you're slower. So if I'm sitting there crouching every time I get scanned, is that she's gonna just catch up with you eventually. There's nothing you can do about that. It doesn't feel as rewarding to try and play against her as other characters. Me personally, I think the only way to salvage this killer is completely remove the drone aspect and give her something. Like Haddonfield, she can set up her drones so well that like you cannot cross the map. But it's okay, because now soon everyone, in 45 minutes, she is not going to be able to do that anymore because she's only going to have one scan line.
Nerfed Skull Merchant, it's time to give it a go. They nerfed quite a lot, and the drones are nerfed as well. Let's see then, Skull Merchant. Here. You see it only has one scan line now, instead of the 2. Let's see how this does. Down nice and fast, that's the undetectable there giving me the hit. There's no way they're DCing the Skull Merchant still. What? There's no way. There is no way. I didn't even injure anyone with the power. All of my hits were M1 attacks. 2 DCs about 2 minutes into the game because of Skull Merchant, despite being butchered. Well, that's the Skull Merchant there for you.
名前までスカルマーチャントになっていて、最初見たとき一瞬びっくりしました。こんなスキンあるんですね。なんかまるでスカリーの劣化版みたいですごい面白いです。これでキラーが本物のスカリーだったらどういう反応するんだろう。